Welcome to the Thriving Farmer Podcast. I'm your host, Michael Kilpatrick. Our mission is to inspire, educate, and celebrate sustainable farming. We believe that you can build a profitable, sustainable farm that gives you true farm freedom. Join us as we talk to farmers, innovators, educators, and entrepreneurs to glean their top takeaways in business and life. Good morning, Thriving Farmers. Today's episode is with Stephen from Buena Vista Gardens in Hawaii. Now, I've known Stephen for a couple years and been following his growth out of his farm. And I've been very impressed with the level of production he's doing with just himself and the actual beauty of his farm. He has a really good job and keeps a very tight ship. So we're going to talk about today of like the challenges and the advantages of farming in Hawaii. We'll talk about some of the crops he's producing. We'll talk about his advice to new farmers, which is actually really good. So you want to stay around to the end to catch that. And we'll talk about kind of his background in starting farmer, that he actually did not come from a farming background. And, you know, his third year of operation, he's doing a fabulous job of managing his soils and growing a great crop for his local community. So join me in welcoming Stephen to the show. All right. Welcome to the podcast, Stephen.
Thanks, Michael. Thanks for having me.
So can you give us a little bit of an overview of your farming operation?
Yeah, so I'm farming in the Hawaiian Islands. I'm on the island of Kauai in a little area called Moloa'a. And I rent and caretake about a 3-acre lot on the island. And I have about a third of an acre market garden full of mixed vegetables. And I also caretake the property and take care of some fruit trees and mow the pasture in exchange for being able to farm the land. And that's pretty much what I have going on now. For a while, I was farming about, a fifth of an acre, and then now it's building to about a third of an acre. And it should be maybe about a half acre by next year. I'm just slowly building it just so I can handle everything that's coming.
Very cool. So this immediately raises one of the questions I hear a lot about Hawaii, is that land is really expensive and hard to get a hold of. Did you find that true? Because I noticed you say you are renting land.
Yeah, so land is very expensive out here per acre. I think it's a really ideal situation to get into a caretaking arrangement here. Things grow extremely fast. Landowners feel really overwhelmed.
Okay.
And so they have a hard time maintaining land. And I think it's a good situation to where if you're someone that can take care of land and make it productive and beautiful, it's a win-win situation for someone that's having a hard time. So I completely went that route, and I think I will continue to do that into my farming future.
Very cool. So how did you get started farming?
Originally, I moved to the island and I started a garden and got really sparked by it. I was pretty amazed by everything that flourishes here. Mm-hmm. Eventually, I was thinking about sort of just volunteering on farms, and then I ended up becoming a woofer on a small organic farm here. And it was a really small operation, and it was just the owner and us two woofers, and we really just got a full education on market gardening, really old school kind of Elliott Coleman style. Mm-hmm. And that sparked me into farming and kind of got my feet wet. And then I've actually visited Colombia and traveled around there. I visited some coffee farms, and I was just really impressed with the lifestyle that they were leading. And it made me have this vision of starting my own farm. Because when I was woofing, I didn't really have that in my mind. I was just, involved in his farming operation. And so when I was really admiring these coffee farmers out there and the life that they were living, it made me want to make the jump and start my own thing. And so when I got back, I pitched the idea to the landowner next door that was really overgrown, and we worked out an arrangement. And so I've been caretaking that property since.
Very cool. Very cool. So what was your background before you moved onto the island?
I grew up on Long Island, New York. So across the world, pretty close to where you were.
Yeah.
And yeah, I have no background in agriculture. It's kind of funny. I moved all the way out here to get introduced to it, and now I realize how rich New York is in that field.
Yeah, absolutely.
Um, as a kid, I was kind of just a kid with a lot of potential, but didn't really use any of it.
Yeah.
You know, I kind of, as a young kid, I got involved in drugs at an early age and kind of got swept up in the whole opiate epidemic that's across the Northeast.
Mm,
And after that, took responsibility for myself, cleaned my act up, but just sort of drifted around for a while with no real direction. And I worked in some high-end restaurants that kind of got me exposed to the food scene, and I got exposed to getting into health as a means to, heal myself. And then I traveled for a while, and I didn't really get into any serious background until I got here and started working on farms and starting my own farm. So, a typical kid not knowing what he wants to do,
mm,
and just sort of dabbling in little things until they found something they were passionate about.
absolutely. So you just found that one thing which got you fired up.
Right.
Yep. So what does a typical day look like for you on the farm?
So I work early mornings and kind of late afternoons. So I take a siesta in the middle of the day. I just find that I don't get much done. So I'll usually work from about 7 to 11:30,
Okay.
and then I'll take a break. The sprinklers will run for the, parts of the afternoon, and then I'll usually work from 3 to 7. So
Okay.
I'm trying to keep that schedule just because middle of the day the heat is really strong and your productivity just wanes.
Hmm.
Um, so I'm doing that. I'm working Monday through Friday, which is really nice, and I'm doing part of Sunday morning. So I'm taking Saturday fully off and half of Sunday off. I have a little delivery on Sunday morning, but that's a new change. And yeah, a lot of it is actually harvesting, marketing, delivering, even maintaining the property.
Hmm.
A lot of the field work is really just done in maybe 2 days of the week, 2.5 days. And
Okay.
that's how my days are set up right now.
Very cool. So let's talk a little bit more about your marketing. I know you do a farmer's market, correct?
Yeah, I do 2 farmers markets a week. They're a little bit smaller markets. There's a lot of farmers markets here, and it's a small island. So it's every day of the week. There's 1 to 3 around the island.
Okay.
So I actually do two. I do a Tuesday and a Wednesday market, year round, and I sell to one health food store. I have a big account with them, and I sell to one small restaurant. So that's where, all of my produce is going.
Very cool. So you also grow a few things besides vegetables like tropical fruits. I saw some pictures of bananas.
Yeah, yeah. So you can grow a lot of different tropical fruit trees here. Most everything was planted before I got here and is in full fruiting. So there's a lot of different varieties of avocados, mangoes, lychee. There's soursop, coconuts. I planted out some bananas, plantains, papayas. We have some more exotic things like dragon fruit and cherimoya. And there's a couple citrus trees. We have some pink grapefruit, and I planted a Myers lemon. And yeah, you can do a really wide variety. It's just a couple of each tree. It's really just for personal consumption. It's not really like
Hmm.
an orchard setup, but it's beautiful just to be able to take care of these trees and harvest from the land.
Yeah, I can imagine. So talk to us about a little bit about the complexity of farming on an island like that. Getting supplies on must be a challenge.
Yeah, supplies are definitely tough. Seeds are totally fine. Things from Amazon are actually fine.
Okay.
But if you're ordering, greenhouse poly, shade cloth, landscape fabric, any large tools, the shipping is basically matches the price of the item. So
Wow.
you end up paying close to double, maybe 60% more on a
Hmm.
lot of items. And so Yeah, and there's no real local suppliers of farm tools that are relevant to market gardening.
Gotcha.
So it can be challenging. It's pricier. So I've just slowly acquired tools. I didn't get everything right out of the gate.
Hmm.
And I keep things really simple here. And I haven't invested too much in tools. And just as funds come in, I'll order one thing here or there. And
Hmm.
the price is challenging, even for things like amendments and all of that. But we just work with it.
Yeah. So like seed starting material, is that something easy? Do they ship that? They're just bales of Pro Mix over there, or what do you use?
I actually use it's called Fox Farms Ocean Forest.
Okay.
It's pretty much like a compost and earthworm casting and peat moss based, and it has things like kelp and
Mm.
things like that in it. And it's a little pricier than the Pro Mix, but they ship all that stuff in. It's just in limited variety, limited quantities. It's you don't have a wide selection to choose from,
Gotcha.
and so I've just chosen what works and use that for the time being.
Yeah, absolutely. Another thing, I was scrolling back through your Instagram and saw you playing with a few weeks ago some seed treatments. Have you had success with that? I know it's been a couple months since you started playing with those.
Yeah, I have had a lot of success with it. So I'm using a mycorrhizal seed treatment on all seeds. And then I have a lot of fungal issues here. So I have a lot
Hmm.
of rhizoctonia and things like that. So I started using Root Shield Plus, and so I'm watering in all my lettuce transplants and things that are more susceptible to it before they go into the field
Hmm.
for about the 2 weeks before they go out. And it's so far it's changed a lot. I mean, I'll have a bed here or there
Hmm.
that have some issues, but switching the landscape fabric and doing root shield has really taken away a lot of the fungal diseases I was having issues with just because the rain here, soil caking up on the bottom of plants and them
Hmm.
not being able to breathe and it's spreading around. So yeah, the inoculants are something I'm really happy with.
Very cool. Now, are you using any tunnels?
No, no. So I don't have any high tunnel or caterpillar tunnel production. I think me and the owner just kind of want to keep the property a little less set up like that. And it's
Gotcha.
really pricey
Hmm.
shipping those things. And so, no, it's all field production. I have a little caterpillar tunnel as a nursery for nursery starts.
Gotcha. Okay.
I don't do anything in the field. I have a couple friends that are doing some high tunnel production, but also we have no electricity here. We're totally off grid. And so that could be a challenge if you're wanting to, run fans or have any
Hmm.
sort of automation and the things that would help in a hot climate.
Gotcha. Absolutely. So
Yeah.
then what does winters look like?
Winters, it cools down a little bit. You can definitely grow a wider variety of crops. It's like 60 degrees. So
Okay.
it definitely doesn't cool down that much. It just drops in temperature a bit. The nights are cooler. There's a lot more abundant rainfall, regular rainfall from about October through early May.
Hmm.
But it can be rainy all year. But typically the winters are the rainy season. It's a little bit more overcast and it's usually beautiful growing weather. A lot of people take the summer off here
Hmm.
from
Interesting.
about early June through August or really slow down what they're producing and just maybe focus on fruit for the summer.
What are
The
your
winter,
temperatures during the summer?
the temperatures, it gets about high 80s, but it stays hot at night. It stays about 70, 72, 75.
Oh, okay.
And it doesn't seem that hot, but the intensity of the sun is really, really strong. It's just different. It's not like a 90-degree day in New York.
Okay.
I think it's just being closer to the equator and being on a little island. It's the intensity on an 80-degree day is really hard for vegetables. The temperature isn't too bad, but the sun exposure is. And so I've been experimenting with, different varieties of shade cloth and using overheads to cool down crops in the summertime. But no, it doesn't swing that much in temperature, maybe 20 degrees, 25 degrees around during the day.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. Yeah, it'd be really interesting to get a par meter and measure the actual light you're getting during the summer there.
Right. So I know like
Yeah.
Australia and New Zealand has issues with that. It's just the sun intensity is harsh.
Yeah.
It's different than if it just peaks in the middle of the day in the Northeast or wherever. Yeah, it can be challenging for certain crops, but we're working around it.
Yeah. So as a farmer, there's endless tasks to be done, and you're solo farming as well, correct?
Yes.
So what systems have you set up to ensure you focus and tackle the most vital priorities?
This past year, I set up a weekly routine, which is really nice. So pared down my crop selection, set up a weekly routine where, I'm direct seeding in the field on this day and seeding in the nursery. I'm transplanting this day. These days are harvest and market days, and really just setting up the week like that and being able to plan ahead and prep beds for the next week. That has been a game changer for me. Just to know, okay, I need 2 beds of arugula on Monday and 2 beds of head lettuce. Where can they go? And staying ahead. So that schedule has really helped me be a little bit of ahead of the game and have a setup system in place to even think about what needs to be done and how it needs to be done.
Gotcha. Now, how many times will you turn over a bed every single year?
Wow. 6 to 8.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, because everything I'm growing is 70 days or less. Like the carrots are about 70 days, but most things are on the ground for, 30 days, give or take a few weeks of harvest. Yeah, I would say probably 8 times a season.
Okay. And then you are doing some cover crops. So you'll probably do a couple crops back to back, then you go to a cover crop, and then back to some more crops, or how do you like to work that?
Right now, my demand is really high for a lot of things. So I've had to kind of taper down on the cover crops just to make room. But ideally, I would like to have about a quarter to a third in cover crop, just quick cover crops, like a 60, and just rotate through that. So yeah, maybe do 2 rotations into cover crop, back into 2 rotations. That would be really, really nice. But right now I have, maybe 10% in cover crop. And usually it's just sort of areas that have had like little challenges. If a crop didn't look nice or maybe had a little disease pressure, I'll throw that into cover crop and then rotate back out of it.
Gotcha. Then how are you turning that cover crop in after it's done?
I'm in a no-till system here. So I've actually been experimenting a lot with just weed whacking it.
Okay.
Like a tender cover crop. So it's basically buckwheat, summer alfalfa, red clover, sometimes oats and peas. So it's not too thick. So just a 6-week cover crop, weed whip it really low, and then just throw a landscape fabric over it. Leave that for about 2 weeks and it's completely gone. And then you just take the landscape fabric off. You can broad fork it if you need to. Maybe add some amendments, rake it, and that's it. And that's worked really good for me.
Interesting. So because the biological activity is so high, it's able just to utilize it very quickly.
Yeah, and I have a bed here or there. So I don't have, 8 beds in a row of a cover crop that I can tarp. So using a landscape fabric is nice just to do single beds and to just chop them, make sure there's good moisture in the soil, throw a landscape fabric over it. And I've been doing that even for, baby greens rotations. If I don't want to hoe it out, I'll just whip it really low, throw a landscape fabric over it, pin it down, and just let it break down for a little bit, check it, and then go from there.
Gotcha. Now, is there compost available on the island?
There's some. Yeah, I've heard a lot of mixed reviews about it. I was making a lot of my own compost, and I kind of stopped using compost. I started doing soil tests, and the organic matter is really high. It's in like the 12 to 15% range on a low GABS test. And so it seems silly to add compost to a soil like that. And I am in a different, geological profile. It does behave differently than another soil with that high organic matter. but I would maybe use it as a weed suppressant. But all my compost, eventually had weed seeds in it. It was,
Yeah.
it was one of the biggest challenges on my farm, actually. And when I stopped using my own compost, things got a lot better in the weed control.
Interesting.
But, yeah, there's some compost available. It's more seems like for like landscaping applications, like
Yeah.
people doing landscaping, just having a little cover mulch. But some market gardeners are using it, and I'm willing to try it. It's just with my soil type, I don't really need it, so that's why I kind of went with inoculants, just to get that biology into the soil when I'm not applying compost regularly.
Very cool. All right. And with that, I'd like to stop here and take a quick break. In a minute, we'll be back with Stephen Ciancioso. Hey, Thriving Farmers, Michael here. So I am so excited to share the Thriving Farmers Summit happening this December. Now, we've been spending the last couple of months really working on this, and we have pulled together a amazing group of farmers and educators to speak to you during this summit. And it's virtual, so you can do it from anywhere online. And we've got speakers such as Joel Salatin and Jordan Green and Charlotte Smith and Nick Burton and Ray Tyler and Brian Bates and Charlotte Smith and Erica Tebbins and Ben Falk and a bunch more farmers from all across and educators from all across the industry sharing on things like farm business and marketing and innovative crops and all sorts of things that help you build a thriving farmer business. Now, in addition, we've also lined up an entire panel of farmer case studies, farmers from all around the world, US, Canada, New Zealand, that are going to be sharing smaller segments of what's working in their business right now. So talking to Carrie from the Looney Farm and Lex and Beth from Ontario and Adam Cohen from Dallas, who's talking about mushrooms, and Audrey, who will talk about farm to school, and Oscar, who will talk about his microgreen business, and Nick, who's going to come on and talk about how he's using hemp on his vegetable farm, and Brendan, who's gone from 0 to 60 with his market garden in the Carolinas. So all sorts of farmers just like you in the trenches, working every day on their farm. They're going to be sharing a little case studies of what's working right now in their business. So I encourage you to go to thrivingfarmersummit.com and sign up. The event is 100% free. The live dates are December 6th, 7th, and 8th. So definitely can't wait to share this with you, and really looking forward to bring these farmers and educators to share their best top tips for building your farm business, for marketing your products, and innovative cropping systems and crops that you can add to your farm in 2020 to make it the best ever and have a thriving farm. So again, go to www.thrivingfarmersummit.com and sign up today. So Stephen, you said farmers markets earlier. You do 2. They're on the island, I'm assuming. And who's your clientele?
There's a lot of health conscious people here. It's definitely a crowd that's more tuned in.
Mm-hmm.
It's a lot of, most of my clientele is women. And so that was sort of a nice insight into the farmers market, just to think about, what women are looking for. They tend to have a little bit more taste than men. And so, set up and display and all of those things. Yeah, it's a lot of mothers, or people it's a wide range. There's a good amount of people in their 20s that are really fit and eating healthy and juicing a lot, and people that are looking for organic produce. And there's not a ton of organic on the island, and not a ton of competition for really high quality vegetables. And so it's been fairly easy to get those people engaged and to have them become loyal customers.
Interesting. So you just focus your promotion at those farmers markets. You're not doing a lot of social media. I do see you have a good farm Instagram, and you are on Facebook as well.
Yeah, I'm not promoting the farm. It's all word of mouth. In a small place, it's the most valuable thing for sure. And if I did promote my farm, I would have to say no to a lot of people, honestly. Pretty much everything is sold when it goes in the ground. But I have a standing order with a health food store, a standing order pretty much with a restaurant. and that's about half my business. And then the other half is farmers markets, and it's sort of, speculative, but I don't have an excess. And if I really promoted my farm, it would do me no good. So I would just have to be like, sorry, I don't have enough to supply you guys right now. So I would wait until I, expanded into a place where I wanted to reach out to those people more.
Gotcha. Because you said next year you do expand in a little bit, but it sounds like your sales would just probably follow that because people keep hearing about you through word of mouth.
Right. I almost want to expand just to incorporate more cover crops.
Yep.
Just to lighten the load on the soil a little bit and probably grow, add a couple crops in, smaller varieties.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm not looking to expand too much further just because harvest is getting to the point where it's sort of maxed out in terms of how much I want to do.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. So let's talk a little bit about beginning farmers. You probably see on social media and even on the island there, people getting started, people doing new farms. What do you see their biggest mistakes being?
Older farmers do this too, but I think a lot of beginning farmers bring products to market that are low quality. Someone might buy those like crusty bunch of beets, but they're not going to come back. It's like if you go into a restaurant and one time it's really nice and the vibe is great and it's beautiful, and the next time you go back, it's crap. And it's like you're going to stop going to that restaurant. And so at the market, instead of just taking a loss on a single crop, you just lost a repeat customer, really, especially in an area where people are, chatting and everyone knows each other. And so I think that can be a mistake. It's like not looking at the long game and just looking at like, oh, this looks decent. Like, let's get rid of it. And so for me, I sort of just, anything coming off the field, if it doesn't look good, I just take a loss on it, and especially for a farmer's market when you don't need to have it. So that's one mistake. And, the usual biting off more than you can chew.
Yeah. Well, it's really interesting that you picked that, not bringing premium quality, because I was literally at a farmer's market Saturday and I talked to a few of the vendors there and they say, yeah, the volume here is not good. We get a few customers. It's just not that many people coming. And if I had been blunt, I would have told them, well, it's absolutely because of your stands.
Yeah.
It's you guys aren't bringing a premium quality. You're not displaying it well. There's no follow-up for people.
Right.
And the beans, had brown spots and were, bulging because the seeds were so big. And I was like, I wouldn't buy that. So they're absolutely shooting themselves in the foot by bringing that low quality product. So you nailed a big one right there.
Yeah. If you want the market to be, the dump for your mediocre stuff, then that just attracts that attracts a certain clientele. And if you bring premium stuff, that attracts a certain clientele. So, you get what you get.
Yeah. So do you think there's anything that new farmers should avoid their first year, like crops or just any other thing on the farm?
I think they should avoid buying land. As much as we're passionate about what we're doing, you don't really know if you want to do it very long term. And so I think renting land is so valuable as long as you can get into a good arrangement and you're not moving around. I think for a beginning farmer, to set things up on a property, see how they function, refine it, and change things. Because if I had a new piece, I would do things pretty differently. Just don't have that vision in the beginning. And so learning on someone else's land and building your skill base and all that is so, so, so valuable. And I think that people should avoid the dream in the beginning of just buying a property and developing it and going that route, especially in an area where it's pricey.
Yeah. Right now where we are, we have obviously our micro farm in our backyard, but we're renting several acres, about only 400 or 500 yards down the street. So it's super convenient, but we just lucked out. Yeah. And we've got a couple acres down there and the landlord's absolutely fabulous. So, but if I were to buy that would have been a massive investment.
Yeah, and it puts so much stress on the operation. I mean, you don't I don't think in the first year you really have the ability to keep up with that and to make some serious payments and still pay yourself and, get ahead. You can rent land for really cheap and you can use that as a training grounds. And that's really what it should be.
Yeah, absolutely. And the other thing I think people don't think about is my landlord happens to have some very nice equipment that we're able to use.
Right.
And so, yeah, being able to tap into that. I mean, I know you have to do some maintenance and some land care, but I'm sure he's got some equipment you're using.
Yeah, like they had a mainline 2-inch PVC irrigation going down the whole property already. They have, a nice mower, the space that I'm looking for, a couple tools here or there. Yeah, there's stuff to get you started, and that can help a lot in the beginning couple months.
Mm-hmm. So, what encouragement would you go back and give your new farmer self if you could?
I would say, that you have what it takes, and that your dedication is there, and you really just have to focus on gaining the knowledge, because that's what really brings you ahead. Focusing on gaining information in such a skilled craft, that's what can really push you forward and launch you into that next stage. So I would just say to stay the course and stay engaged and to keep learning, to keep diving into that space.
Yeah. So when you first started farming, did you feel overwhelmed, unsure of yourself?
I definitely felt physically overwhelmed, especially the way I did it.
Yeah.
Digging out grass with shovels and broad forking sod. It was just crazy, honestly. I was very enthusiastic, and I would do it very differently now if I really had thought about it.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think it was just physically challenging. I think mentally I had a really good grasp on it, and stayed focused. But I did a lot of just backbreaking stuff in the beginning that could have been avoided, and that was overwhelming, Just like, how am I going to keep doing it like this? But yeah, I stayed really small in the beginning. And so I started doing one farmer's market, and I would bring a couple $100 worth of stuff, and people were stoked, and I was happy, and I kept a night job, and, I slowly made beds. I didn't just, plot out a third of an acre and jump into it. I really watched closely and watched the market and said, okay, I can bump up to this, and I can add the health food store and small accounts. And over the course of 18 months, I really slowly grew it. So in the beginning, it was pretty mellow, but I had that additional income to sort of back me up.
Gotcha. Yep. So if you could pick one, what would be your favorite farming tool?
I would say the Jang seeder. The more you use that tool, the more you realize just how precise that thing is.
Oh, yeah.
I've seeded arugula and carrots with it every week for the past 2 years, and it's the same every single time. It's incredibly accurate. So for small seeds, I would say the Jang, that was one of the first purchases I made, and I don't regret that at all. And if broke, I'd buy a new one, like no questions.
Yeah. So what roller setting are you using for the carrots?
I use X24.
Okay. Yep.
Some people use the XY. That's the little cross one. I just use the X24, and I do 1-inch spacing, 5 rows on a bed. And I do it like that, and I throw 50% shade over it. Most people won't have to do that, but I do. In the winter time, you can get away without it, but the heavy rains will sort of create some erosion, and the 50% shade actually stops a lot of that. Yeah, I use the X24 for pretty much everything. I use it for arugula, brassica mix, baby lettuce, carrots. And then I'll use like the F24 for like red Russian kale. And I'll use like the G12 for cilantro. And that's pretty much all I'm direct seeding. But yeah, the X24 is probably the most used.
Interesting. No, that's great. So with that Jang, then you're doing 5 rows of carrots on a bed. What's your cultivation for that? Are you using like a rake on that? Are you using like a wire hoe or a stirrup hoe?
I was using collinears for a long time, and I still really like collinears, but I've been using the wire weeders more.
Gotcha.
So as soon as things pop, I'm just going with a wire weeder and just using, the different sizes for in between rows. And I like the way they kind of just roll over soil. Like the collinear can kind of build soil as you're dragging it and sometimes bury the rows a little bit too much. And I like to cultivate like right when they come up, right when you can see the row.
Yeah.
And so the wire weeders have been really nice for that. And I want to start prepping beds a little more in advance, maybe throwing landscape fabric over it, getting it prepped, taking it off, running a wire weeder before I seed, and then, doing kind of a stale seed bed that way. But for right now, I'm just using wire weeders, collinear hose, and a stirrup hoe for the paths, which is working okay. But I'd like to switch up my path management, honestly.
Yeah. So what would you like to move to for that, do you think?
I've been looking at that wheel hoe with the flat blade. It's almost like a collinear blade.
Yes.
It's not like the stirrup hoe.
Yep.
And that looks really nice. They make, a 10-inch and a 20-inch, and I have, 18-inch best. That looks really cool because the back and forth movement of the stirrup hoe one, I feel like if you get your paths early with that flat blade, that would be really nice. So I'm looking into that. Wood chips could work, but I'm not too crazy about that. We have chickens here everywhere.
Okay. Yeah.
In Hawaii, and they will get into your garden like whenever there's mulch and debris and all that and just rip things up. And so, yeah, sort of avoiding mulch, but looking into that tool.
Very cool. All right. So what would you say the biggest lesson that you've learned over the years as a farmer has been?
One of my mentors kind of told me this story, and he told me a story about how he started a market garden in California, and he made this beautiful space, full of flowers and vegetables and all of that. And he eventually had to move off the land and stop farming it. And he was really disappointed, and it was like his first market garden. And he went back a year later, and it was a parking lot. I don't think he meant to give me a lesson, but it was sort of like, if you're going to do this a really long time, you're going to start many different farms potentially, And I think when you get on a piece of land, you get sort of really attached to it and you put all this work into it. But I think that stuck in my mind as like, take this piece, make it beautiful, do what you can with it, and then be okay with moving on if that comes to it. And so I think that stuck with me and made me appreciate the land a little bit more and approach it differently. That was a big takeaway, actually.
So would you say when you approach the land differently, that you approach with that the permanence may not be there that you want, that it's going to be a little bit more fluid? Right.
It's almost like when they say that, you accept that you're going to die, that you live a little bit more fully, And so that's a weird analogy, but it's sort of like not holding on makes you sort of appreciate those little moments and the beauty of it, and just know like jungle's going to take over this section like really fast if you were to leave it. And all that work you did up front is really backbreaking, but don't think so hard about that. Don't hold on to that, and just take a piece of land and do what you can with it and make it better than what you found.
That's actually really good. So where can people find more about you and your work?
Really, I just have an Instagram out in social media. So it's under Buena Vista Gardens on Instagram, and I post photos there and keep people updated. But beyond that, that's the best place to reach me at the moment.
All right. Well, thank you, Stephen, so much for coming on. I really appreciate your time and can't wait to share this with our audience.
Awesome. Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
So there you have it, another episode in the books. So I'd love if you would hop on over to iTunes and leave us a rating and a review. Those mean everything to us. We love to hear what you're thinking. If you have a podcast guest that you can recommend, please pop on over to the Thriving Farmer Podcast website and leave us a review. That's thrivingfarmerpodcast.com.